Today's video is going to be about my Chrysler Conquest and the cooling setup I'm doing on my 4g63 swap. Some modifications need to be done to the cooling system to make it work in a rear-wheel drive format. As you can see, the water inlet pipe to the water pump is facing the wrong direction, since usually the 4g63 is turned around sideways in the engine bay. The outlet for the thermostat housing has to be corrected as well, since it's now back by the firewall. This is the stock water inlet pipe for the 4g63. I plan on cutting it and welding a -16 AN fitting on it, as well as welding a port for the heated core lines and also coolant to the turbo.
Should look nice. Nice little bracket to hold up the water neck.
What's a long neck?
What's a long neck?
Here's a close-up of the water line that goes into the water pump. I made a bracket that comes off the pipe and it mounts to the power steering pump bracket. Those two bolts right there. That holds it in place because there's just an O-ring that basically creates a seal, so it needed more support. This is the back of the cylinder head. Now this is usually where the thermostat goes. I have already welded this part up. I didn't really take any video of making this. But basically I cut the thermostat housing apart, the stock one, kind of cut like a little angle, added ports for my coolant temp sensor and then another port for barb fittings to go to the heater core or wherever else I want to my coolant to go. I welded a -16 AN fitting onto it with a 90. I don't recommend, maybe if you have the resources, to use the stock thermostat housing because it's cast aluminum and it was kind of hard to weld. So if you can get fresh metal machined, I kind of recommend doing that because it was kind of some poppy parts around it. So there, that part of it is. I'm gonna work on. I'm gonna put this back in there. And then this engine is mounted in a way right now that it's a little more far forward. That way I have clearance for the back and then the cam angle sensor without having to get rid of my heater core inside, because that would really suck, because I want to drive this thing in the fall, so if my windshield gets all foggy I need it. And then basically the cooling hose is going to go from here. I'm going to put an inline thermostat about here, and that should hopefully, the alternator's getting relocated over here, and hopefully that clears, and the end goal is to get to here, to the top. So I wanted something a little bit flexible, that's why I did AN. I could have probably ran a pipe, but I'm not sure how that's going to work with the intake manifold. So there's, like every project, there's a million ways to do everything. Just depends what you want to do. So here are my inline thermostat housing parts. Basically, thermostat gets sandwiched between these two pieces, and then I need to weld the AN fittings onto these. So I'll have to do that. Also, coming back to the radiator, I'll have to weld AN fittings on there as well, top and bottom. This is the CX Racing intercooler. I'm going to weld my AN fittings onto it. This one, since the clearance here is such a short distance, I won't be able to get my TIG welder in there, so I'm going to actually just cut this right off flat. That way I can just weld around it without bending my fins up. Or sometimes too, you take your torch here and you start welding, and the flame could actually melt those fins. They melt very easily. So that's what we're going to do next. So we got our fittings on, all welded onto the radiator. This one turned out really nice. It was my second one, so I get a little practice in then. This one seems like there's a lot more contaminants in the weld, but it'll still seal up just fine. So that's one thing, one tip I guess I could give when you're welding aluminum is just clean it to bejesus and wipe it with acetone, and it should work for you. It takes a little bit, but got my lovely assistant Devin here helping me. He's holding my thermostat, inline thermostat. Nice. Well, anyways, I think between the starter, the alternator being on this side, and I'm currently planning on using the stock first gen intake manifold, it comes down really low on the side of the engine. So it might be a little too busy. We'll see once I get the manifold on there. But I think I might actually put the thermostat there and make a little bracket for it, just to keep it out of the way of everything. So I guess we'll see once we start putting things together a little bit more, but that's kind of like modding cars. You just kind of got to go with the flow and change things. So this is going to end today's episode. I have my routing off the back of my cylinder head done, where the stock thermostat housing used to be. I have my AN fittings welded onto the radiator. I'm going to have to buy an additional 45-degree AN fitting down here, and a hose, because the oil cooler lines are right there, and to get that to work, I believe I'm going to have to put a 45 there so the coolant hose doesn't kink. As well, this fitting, I'm probably going to have that powder coated once I get a few more things done. The power steering is going to be the next big project that I'll work on. I'm using the 2nd gen power steering pump, so I'm going to have to get some sort of hydraulic hose made to go from that to the stock Conquest steering box. I also wanted to kind of touch on why I did this the way I did. I kind of wanted everything to be a bolt-in affair. You can, if you want, you can remove this freeze plug out of the front of the cylinder head and put a pipe there, or an inline thermostat there as well, and run it to here, and then just block off the back of the cylinder head. I didn't want to have to modify the cylinder head and the head gasket. I've kind of heard rumor that if you do not modify the cylinder head and head gasket, there's coolant stagnation issues in the back of the cylinder head, just the way the coolant routes through there. So I kind of wanted to avoid those issues, so I guess I chose the longer route. But we'll see how it goes. But thanks for watching. If you like us, please share us if you like, and we'll see you later.